Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley for EllenHudson.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am playing with some brand new products from Rina K Designs. This is the Sweet Stuff Stamp and Stencil Collection, along with the Poppin' Pink Neon Glitz Glitter Gel and the Enamel Transfer Sheets. Now these are all kind of designed to coordinate together. I have the stamp set here and you can see it has some adorable sweet images, ice cream cones, cupcakes, donuts. You could use this for birthdays, thank you cards, all kinds of things. And then I also have the coordinating dies, and I also have this stencil which is designed to coordinate with this. So this gives you an area where you can kind of use it as a backdrop with that crisscross design, and then also some detail layers that you can add on with stenciling. Now I'm also going to be playing with the Neon Poppin' Pink Enamel Transfer Sheets. These work a lot like transfer foil. I'm going to show you those in just a bit. And also the Poppin' Pink Glitter Gel. Now this is so much fun. It looks like the glitteriest icing that you could ever imagine. It makes me kind of want to eat it, but it is not edible, so I don't recommend trying that. Now, I've gone ahead and die cut several of these images out of some plain white cardstock, and I'm doing my stamping after my die cutting this time. And that's because if you look at this stamp set, there are actually separate images that make up a single image. And I find when there are multiple stamped images that make up a single die cut image, it's easier for me to die cut first and then stamp on the die cuts. So you'll notice I've taken the image, the negative image of these die cuts, and I've placed it into my mini MISTI, and I'm putting those die cut pieces of cardstock into the negative space. And then I'm going to line up my stamps on top of those die cut images, and this is going to help me get them stamped onto the die cut properly. Now, once I have all of those stamps lined up over the die cut images, I'm going to go ahead and close the door of my MISTI, and then I can start my stamping. And I've die cut multiple of each of these images so that I can kind of do mass production here. I'm not doing like super mass production. I'm just doing 3 of each image so that I have a little bit of kind of wiggle room to experiment with these new mediums. And I'm starting by inking up my stamps in some Catherine Pooler Sandcastle ink. This is the lighter brown in the Catherine Pooler line. There is a darker brown called Over Coffee, so if you wanted to try a little bit darker brown, you could do that, but I'm going to use that to layer up some of the detail images later on. So once I have the first batch stamped, I'm going to go ahead and put a new round of die cut images into that negative space that's loaded into my mini MISTI. And then I'm going to re-ink my stamps again using the same color ink and stamp on those plain white die cuts again. And I'm going to repeat this step until all of my die cuts are stamped on. So once again, just stamping in that Sandcastle ink and then closing the door of my MISTI, and this helps me stamp perfectly onto those pre-die cut images. So now that I have the base layer kind of stamped, I'm going to go ahead and work on some of the topper pieces of the ice cream and the frostings. So I'm going to repeat this same process. I'm going to put my die cut into the negative space, and I'm going to line up my stamp onto that die cut and then close the lid of my MISTI to mount those stamps. And this really helps me create several of these in a really quick fashion because I'm not having to line up each stamped image each time. This time for the pink portion, I'm using the Catherine Pooler It's a Girl ink, and I'm just pressing that onto my die cut images. And once again, I can load new die cuts into the negative space and complete all of my stamping. So now that all of my stamping is done, I can go ahead and add some details using the coordinating stamp and stencil. That's a lot of stencils there. But basically what I'm doing is I'm taking these stamped images and I'm holding them in place on the back of the stencil using a little bit of purple tape. And I am going to coat these first 3 die cuts with some ThermoWeb Transfer Gel Duo here. Now, there are a couple things that if I could go back, I would do differently. And this is the first thing that I would do differently. Instead of the Transfer Gel Duo, I would probably use the Transfer Gel Blanco. And that is actually a white transfer gel. It works with heat. but that will help kind of block out the color that's going to come through on this donut, and you'll see what I mean later on. So I'm just stenciling over these, and then I'm going to remove them from the back. I'm putting a nice kind of generous but not too thick layer of this transfer gel duo, so there will be a little bit of dimension to these, and then I can set them aside to dry. They're kind of milky white looking when they're still wet, and it dries perfectly clear. Now I'm going to repeat the same process, but this time I'm going to be using the Neon Glitz Glitter Gel. Now this stuff is so much fun, and I absolutely love this poppin' pink. And there are several of these neon colors available also, and there are some Rina K glitter gels that will work very much the same in the Ellen Hudson online store. So be sure to check there. These glitter gels are really fun to work with. And you're going to notice that I'm going to clean up my stencil and my palette knives very quickly when I am done with these mediums, because I don't want them to dry on my stencil or my palette knife. Now here I'm just wiping it off with a baby wipe, but it's actually best to take this to a sink and wash it with some warm soapy water when you're completely done with all of your images. So I did the donut first, and now I'm doing one of these ice creams, and I'm just trying not to go over the edge of the stencil here. This one's kind of low on the stencil, and you can kind of get some of that glitter gel onto your cone if you're not careful. If you wanted to, you could add just a strip of some Post-it tape across the bottom to kind of protect that. Now I wanted to show you what these look like as they dry. Now this one here, you can see it is drying. It has a little bit of milkiness left to it, but it's looking a little bit clear in some other areas. This one is still very wet. You can see that the transfer gel is actually still very, very white on this, and it's more apparent in person. But I think that the best way to see this is actually on this donut. You can see it has a very milky white appearance on this donut, which means it's not dry. But after letting it dry for a bit, you can see it's actually perfectly clear now. Now, once these are clear and completely dry, I know I'm good to move on with my next step. So I have my mink, and I'm going to turn that on the back, and I'm going to set it to the 3 heat setting here. Now, the ones that I did with the glitter gel, once they're dry, they're good to go on my card project. But the ones I did with the transfer gel duo, I'm going to add these enamel transfer sheets to. Now, you can see these are a little bit transparent. You can actually see my trimmer through the transfer sheet, which is why I was talking about the transfer gel Blanco earlier. I think that dark opaque white transfer gel would be better in this case, because it's going to block out some of the brown that's going to come through that transfer gel, and you'll see that here in just a bit. So I've added small pieces of these enamel transfer sheets to each of my images that have the transfer gel on them that have dried. And I'm going to put them inside a piece of computer paper, and I'm going to run them through my mink. And the heat and pressure from the mink is going to cause the transfer sheets to stick to the areas where there is transfer gel. Now this works just like transfer foils. It's the same concept. But instead of a foiled appearance, you're going to end up with this really cool shiny enamel effect. Now remember when I said there were 2 things I would have done differently, and the first was the transfer gel Blanco. This was the other thing I would have done differently. I used a really thick 32-pound piece of paper to create my little folder to run this through the mink. That put extra pressure onto this transfer gel when I was transferring the enamel transfer sheets to it, and it caused some of that gel to kind of push out. Like the design wasn't quite as clear, and I lost a little bit of my dimension that I had. So if I could go back, that would be the second thing I would do differently, and I would use parchment paper or the little folder that comes with my mink to run these through my mink instead of that really thick paper that I use. So just keep that in mind. Now for the background of my cards, I have created my card bases out of some Neenah Solar White heavyweight cardstock. They're cut to 4 1/4 by 11 inches and then scored at 5 1/2 to create a top folding A2 size card. And I am stamping the swirl background from the Essentials by Ellen line onto these card bases. Now I've gone ahead and used the It's a Girl ink from Catherine Pooler, but I did stamp it off on a piece of scratch paper before I stamped it onto my card base. And I also kind of blotted the edges of this swirl background with a dry cloth before before I stamped it onto the card base. I'm just kind of doing a partial inking technique for that. I didn't want the entire background covered. Now I've heat embossed a couple of the sentiments onto some vellum using some gilded embossing powder from Brutus Monroe, and these sentiments are a part of the Sweet Stuff stamp set. And I've gone ahead and added my images onto my card bases using some foam adhesive. And then I added just a few sparkling clear sequins to add a little bit more shimmer and shine. And that completes my 2 card projects today, featuring the new Rina K Designs Sweet Stuff Stamp and Stencils collection. And you can see the beautiful effect you get with that glitter glitch gel. I absolutely love it. It is so yummy. You're going to want to eat it, but like I said, don't. And then here is a look at the items that I created using the enamel transfer sheet. So much fun. I had a great time experimenting and playing with these products. As always, I will have links to the featured products used in these projects in the description at YouTube, but head on over to the ellenhudson.com blog. Over there, I'll have more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. As always, thanks for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our paper crafting and card making video tutorials. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.